So for this video, I want to talk about the concept of the orientation or direction of the fight and how important and how impactful it can be in certain situations. For that, we're going to use this game between Rogue and G2. Rogue was in a pretty decent spot doing this game. They have Soul Point coming up. They are 3k gold lead, which I guess is not that big considering the time in the game, but they were in a decent position. They just picked off the Senna and got the inhibitor. They're in a position to get the dragon. They have this, the Aphelios and the Azir late game. They have a lot of control, so they're in a decent spot. They end up engaging a weird fight, which doesn't work out, and they lose the game off of that. So I'm going to play this fight so you can see the engage, and then we're going to talk about what I want to talk about. You can see the Sion engages. This leaves the Azir exposed in the backline. He ends up getting assassinated, and then it's just up to the Aphelios, who even he can't kind of bring this fight back. So if the Aphelios can't carry your fight, then maybe it's a bad fight. So that's kind of, I guess, what we want to talk about, why this fight is bad. I'm going to assume you've watched the game, so I'm not going to go too deep into it. This is not going to be a VOD review or anything like that. And there's also a lot of other factors. And I mean, you can even just say that they just shouldn't have fought here. But, we're going to look at the execution of this fight and talk about why it's bad and why, if you use the information that Rogue had prior to the fight, you could see that it's a bad fight. And that's important. We don't want to just look at the result and use that as our argument, right? So there you go. So like I said, they picked off the Senna, and they get the inhibitor, and now they're going to start moving down towards the dragon, which is spawning in about a minute, and they're going to start recalling, and I assume they realize that if they recall now, that's going to allow G2 to walk into the river and place vision, get control of the river, and then they have to fight back for it, or they will have to rush to stop G2 from taking the dragon. And so I think that's why they decided to stay, and they contest the wave, they start to push the wave, and they see G2 in the mid lane. So here you can kind of start to see what I mean when I say orientation of the fight. So if we split the lane itself into two, you'll see that Rogue is going to keep to this side, and G2 is going to keep to that side of the map overall, and of the lane itself. And so obviously Rogue is trying to get position on the dragon, so that's why they're here. G2 is trying to contest the wave, and usually teams will end up mirroring each other in these situations. So it's not like G2 is going to position here, start to move towards there, because then they can just get engaged on. So they're gonna end up mirroring, because that will give them the angle on the wave without putting them necessarily closer to Rogue. And so teams end up usually mirroring each other, and you get this kind of orientation as opposed to just along the lane itself. And that's kind of one of the issues here. I think a lot of teams seem to consider the fact that because the lane's a corridor, I'm just gonna display it for a little bit. Because the lane's a corridor, and if you engage along the lane, you will get a front-to-back team fight, or you'll engage in front and you can just push them back, or just engage, like I said, front-to-back. And that's just simply not true, because you have these side corridors, these side openings, and it's not a closed-off corridor, the lane, right? So it's not like the only option for the opponent is just to move back and move forward, right? So you have these side corridors, which then allow teams to move into them, and then from here, which is what ended up happening in this fight, by the way, from here, you get kind of this situation. Obviously not here, but kind of like this. You'll see it better once you get to it. But you get this situation instead of this situation, right? Okay. And that's important. And because, like I said, you can see it even here. Rogue keep to the bottom side, G2 keep to the top side. The only thing I guess that Rogue don't know is where Kha'Zix is. But the last time they saw him was around here, when the wave was still there for them. But I think it's safe to assume that he's around here, considering how often G2 retreated into that area. And they have a ward here, they have a ward on the blue buff there, I don't know if you can see it. So even if you're not 100% sure, you should be pretty aware of the possibility, the high possibility, that he's around here. And that's important as well. Okay, so this is about where they decide to engage. I'm not sure why they decide to engage. My only thought process here is that they thought that the set had a flank, and this is kind of where I want to drive this point, that the orientation of the fight is really important, because the orientation of the fight is going to tell you if you have a flank or not. Technically, if you're engaging like this, maybe you have a flank, right? So if G2 moves backwards, eventually maybe he's going to get to them, and you're going to have a flank, right? So like this, if I control arrows, that's kind of a flank, but he's not even in position for this. But also, if you're a Sion player, you should be aware of the fact that your opponent is going to move to the side when you ult into them, because most players are not going to try and run with the train, right? So if a train is coming at you, and you know that the train can't turn really well, you're gonna move to the side. You're not gonna run with the train because it's faster than you. So Sion should have known that they're gonna move to move away from him, as opposed to move with him, because then he's just gonna run into them anyway. And the fact that we talked about these openings here, the fact that G2 is this far up, and even if they're not that far up, because the engage is so long, and this is a lot of space. Like, it doesn't look like a lot of space, but it's a lot of space. Because the engage is this long, they're always going to have access to one of these corridors, right? So one of these openings where they can move to the side. And so what ends up happening with this engage, and you can already see that even his engage is not like straightforward. His engage ends up curving, which ends up matching the angle of your flank, which means it's no longer a flank. Your flank is the same direction as your engage. So that's why he ends up being completely useless and very late to this fight. And this is something they should have known, like the fact that they can use these openings here, and the fact that it's very likely that G2 is going to move to the side of Sion. Again, with my arrows. Okay, so that should have been pretty obvious. And that's not even talking about the fact that they don't consider Kha'Zix a champion that exists in the game, but that's a different point. And so, with that said, I would say that if they really wanted this engage, the Sion should have actually tried to ult into this direction to actually close this off. If I maybe make it a little bit better, to close this this area off, which then would have pulled G2 this direction, or even this direction, which is even better for the Sion. Maybe not that good for the Azir still, but if you don't want to consider the Kha'Zix, and I guess maybe not Nautilus, maybe Nautilus could have moved into this area and defended the Azir if he was considering the fact that Kha'Zix exists. But anyway, that's the point. They don't consider how this fight is going to play out post their engage, and that is kind of based around the direction of your engage and the options of your opponent, right? So if you limit one option, in this case, if he was a little bit more towards here, because if I go a little bit backwards, you'll see, because perks and caps are a little bit more towards the center. So if he came in kind of like this, it would look weird, but he would close this option, and it's possible that they would move here, and maybe even if Set comes in, they would move into him. They would maybe move here. He could still come through here, and then you would have a flank. And that's kind of the point here. And again, like I said, there's a lot of issues with this engage. The fact that it is a long-range engage, which leaves your backline exposed. You don't consider the fact that the Kha'Zix can be here, which he most likely is, and he actually is. So you leave your Azir pretty open to this. And so pretty much you end up engaging kind of like this and just pretty much running and trying to catch G2. And so I don't know. I think I made my point. I think it's something that Rogue should have seen, expected, especially like I said, the fact that players are going to move to the side. So his position is completely useless. So if Sion knows that Set is here, he shouldn't be engaging this way. He shouldn't be engaging this way. He should be trying to close this area off and then pushing them that way towards him, or that way, right? So yeah, I'm gonna leave it at that. It's already kind of long, and I would like to know what you think. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I think I'm right, but if you think I'm wrong, I would like to hear why. And thanks for watching.